This is me 1 year ago. This is me 4 months ago. And here I am today. What happened?
So Bryan Johnson, the very wealthy tech millionaire who's trying to beat death by undergoing an extremely regimented lifestyle with strict workouts, diets, and supplements, works with a team of health professionals who track nearly every aspect of his health,
which include his nighttime erections. The thing I love about Bryan is he openly shares everything he learns with the public. He doesn't hold back on any of his biohacking journey, whether that be positive or negative.
He is known as the most measured man in history.
You know, I used to get a lot of hate, and people were suggesting, I was one step away from death. That caused a lot of reflection. And then I was like, off.
I've been following this man's journey for a while, and I'm not shocked by the negative comments about his appearance because people on YouTube can be really harsh. But I've always looked at him and thought, that's outstanding that he's taking all these measures to turn back the clock and be as healthy as possible. Some of his biomarkers show that some of his organs and systems are functioning at the same level of a 20-year-old, and he's 47, and he looks really physically fit and healthy. But at the same time, I've always wondered why he seemed to be against getting aesthetic injectable treatments done to his face. If your face doesn't match the youthfulness of your body, it creates this weird disconnect.
Okay, so how did we get here? If you remember, when I started this project, we were trying to evaluate how close we are to being able to stop death. And the way we did that is we looked at all the scientific evidence on what you could do to slow down and reverse aging damage. And one of these therapies is known as caloric restriction, which means if a person like me consumes 2,500 calories a day to maintain the same weight, you'd reduce that. And so my caloric intake was 1,950 calories, substantially less.
Caloric restriction is part of the reason he looks so lean. And in a previous video, I discussed that people who are really lean and fit, those who are athletes, can sometimes look older than their age because they lose their facial fat. And our facial fat acts as a natural padding, and it provides this youthful softness. So when the fat diminishes, it can expose the underlying skeletal structure, and this can make someone look older.
This caused me to lose a lot of fat, including in my face. So people started comparing me to Tilda Swinton. Now this was about 2 years into the project, and we were pretty ecstatic. The biomarkers we had achieved in me were pretty stunning. Remember, I was 43 years old when I started. I had led a life like poor health habits as a kid, 20 years of running myself into the ground as an entrepreneur, 10 years of chronic depression. I was in a really bad state of health, and in just 2 years' time, we turned it all around. My biomarkers were fantastic. We were excited. But when I went out in public, people were like, wait, is this guy gonna die?
A lot of athletes and individuals on extreme caloric restrictive diets like Bryan often don't realize that when you're maintaining a really lean, healthy physique with a low body fat like that, it can make your face look unhealthy, which is the opposite look that you're going for.
It turns out that facial fat is really important to how someone gauges someone else's youthfulness.
Facial fat is very important when it comes to our attraction. And in a previous video, I spoke about the balance between having too much and too little and what those effects do to our faces.
The problem was, no matter how good my biomarkers were, they would look at my face and say, that guy's old.
This hits home for me because I realized this when I got older and I dropped maybe 12 pounds, and I sometimes practice intermittent fasting, and I try my best to only eat when I'm hungry so that I can maintain a healthy, fit body weight, and I do everything I can to stay fit. But it's why the saying exists. At a certain age, you have to choose between your fanny or your face. No matter how healthy you eat, no matter how toned or how fit our bodies are, our faces can still show signs of aging. And I think women are a lot more familiar with this trade-off. It's a delicate balancing act. And it's why so many women turn to aesthetic injectables.
So in response, we said, we're going to do Project Babyface. We know that in our youth, we have a lot of facial fat, that over time, it lessens. In fact, in your 20s, you start losing 1% of your collagen every year. So by the time you're 80 years old, you've lost 75% what you had in your early 20s.
In a previous video, we discussed
that a youthful face has an abundance of not just collagen and elastin in the skin, but an abundance of facial fat. And you could observe this from seeing the beautiful actress Charlize Theron from her 20s to now.
You probably are aware that people use things like fillers to compensate for the loss of volume. It's why a face can look plump and round, but it's just filler. It's just masking the problem. We wanted to figure out if we could use legitimate rejuvenation technologies to restore volume in my face.
Bryan loves regenerative medicine, and I completely understand why he wanted to avoid fillers. I agree with him on that fillers don't really address the root cause of aging. They're like a Band-Aid solution where they temporarily fill out areas where your fat, collagen, or bone density has diminished over time. And with that being said, I'm a huge fan of regenerative injectable treatments, which are also known as biostimulators, things like Sculptra and Renuva, because with regenerative treatments and biostimulators, you're actually helping the body rebuild and rejuvenate what we lose rather than simply camouflaging it with filler. Fillers do have their place, and they're great for when someone wants an enhancement, like a lip filler enhancement, a nose enhancement, and other enhancements, and filler can give amazing results. And it's also great to use in places where you can't use biostimulators, like the lips. But regenerative treatments provide a more holistic solution because they work with your body to rebuild what's been lost. And I believe regenerative treatments are the future of aesthetic medicine, and people who really are health conscious like Bryan tend to go with these types of treatments as opposed to fillers, especially men. Men don't usually like the idea of getting fillers as much.
The first thing I did is Sculptra, which is a biostimulator. It's injected into certain regions of the face. For example, the temples, right around the mouth, through here. It's designed to allow your body to naturally produce collagen. So instead of putting filler in the face, which just expands in volume, you're getting actual collagen production.
Just to let you know, if this is your first time watching my videos, I love Sculptra. I always joke around and say I would marry a vial of Sculptra because Sculptra was life-changing for me, because I was relying on fillers before I discovered it, and I felt like I couldn't hold on to the results of filler because I work out a lot. So after around 6 months, I felt like I was starting from ground zero every time. So I do a lot of Sculptra for anti-aging for myself and for my patients, and I have several videos out about Sculptra.
My protocol has been doing 2 vials every 6 months. I think the company recommends 1 per year, so I've exceeded what they're recommending. Also, I was compensating from a place of pretty serious deficit, not starting as a maintenance mode of 1 vial per year at, say, age 28, and going through time. I didn't do any until I was age 46, and I'd lost a lot of weight. So I've been trying to play a little catch up, but Sculptra is first.
Sculptra is by the vial, and when you're trying to figure out how many vials someone needs, it's actually recommended that you have a vial a decade. And this is just an estimate. So let's say you're 46 years old when you start like he was. You would start out by getting 4 or 5 vials of Sculptra, but not all at once. You'd usually get 1 or 2 treatment vials per session and maybe wait 4 to 8 weeks and then do another 1 or 2 vials, and then maybe wait 3 months for your full results, because it takes time to build collagen and elastin. And after 3 months, you can continue doing more based on your results and your goals.
Next is I tried Renuva, which is fat transfer. Now, ideally, you want to use your own fat. The problem was I didn't have enough fat on my body to do a transfer. And the doctor was concerned that if we tried to extract any fat I had, I would leave an indentation on my body. And so I used a donor's fat.
So Renuva is a biostimulator that's one of its kind because it stimulates your body to produce its own fat. But Renuva itself does not actually contain any fat.
It's made from the extracellular matrix of donated human fat tissue. The extracellular matrix is the framework of proteins, collagens, and other molecules that surround cells.
Renuva contains the same collagens, proteins, and growth factors as your own fat, but the actual fat has been removed. And in people like Bryan, because he's so lean, a fat transfer can be very challenging because he doesn't have much fat to harvest without causing issues like indentations at the donor site. So Renuva is a unique product because it's the only way to get fat into an area without having a fat transfer in which you have to take fat from another area of your body.
When I did this, I had an extreme allergic reaction. In fact, the first day I did it, I met up with a reporter to a story for Bloomberg, and on my way home, I blew up. Like I couldn't even see out of my eyes. I called him, I said, just a heads up, I'm gonna show up. It's me. You may not recognize it, but don't be scared.
So just to let you know, a lot of my videos are well researched and supported by medical studies, which I link in the description of my videos. Also, I often chat with the scientists who work at these pharmaceutical companies that manufacture these aesthetic medications, and Renuva can sometimes cause swelling. It's normal to have swelling right after an injection, but Renuva can sometimes cause swelling that lasts for a few weeks. But it does seem that Bryan had some sort of allergic reaction to this product because he has a massive amount of swelling. And stay stay tuned because I have a really interesting story about Renuva that's coming up. But it's very rare when people are allergic to any type of injectables, whether that be a hyaluronic acid filler or biostimulators, but there have been cases of reports of hypersensitivity reaction to fillers, Sculptra and Renuva, but it's very rare. I personally have never had someone have an allergic reaction to any type of injectable, and although Renuva comes from a donor, there are no cells or DNA inside Renuva.
Because of the allergic reaction, we discontinued it. Now, sadly, it was a promising technology. We were excited about it, and we thought it might be a really good path to revolumize, but because I reacted so profoundly, we just couldn't continue it. So that stopped after one therapy.
It is unfortunate that Bryan had this type of reaction because Renuva is a one-of-a-kind product right now. Because as of now, nothing else has been scientifically proven that it can stimulate fat. I recently began testing Renuva out on my face, and so far I'm really liking the results. But I'm still testing it out in order to decide if I officially want to bring it on because it's not necessarily new. It's been used for around 10 years, but it was only in the hands of a very select group of plastic and reconstructive surgeons, and not many people knew about it.
And I, like Bryan, believe in evidence-based medicine, and in this case, the evidence is not measuring biomarkers, but seeing actual results and improvement in facial volume. So I've been documenting footage of my journey.
So far, I've had Renuva injected to my face 3 times, but I've only treated my temples 2 times.
And the second time I treated my temples, we did a lot more volume, which I needed, and I always say the temples are like a black hole because they can take such a large amount of volume.
And I didn't end up bruising to the area of my temples.
I did develop bruising around my eyes, and it got pretty bad, but this wasn't shocking because we know this can happen no matter what product we use to the temples. And again, this only happened the second time I treated my temples, and this bruising resolved completely, but I did get a little small area of swelling under my right eye, and I noticed that this swelling would come and go. It was transient. It never stuck around the whole time. And I think within a 1-month period, I maybe had around 3 to 4 of these episodes.
I think it's related to the increase in volume we did to my temples on our second treatment. And now it's been about a month since I last noticed the swelling, so it seems to have completely resolved. The reason why I wanted to personally try Renuva, even though I love Sculptra, is because a youthful face is not just all collagen and elastin. A lot of our facial volume when we're younger is from fat. Another reason I wanted to try it is because the results from stimulating fat may last longer. The rumor is that your results from Renuva last a long time, longer than the results from Sculptra. And this is coming from providers who have been doing both Sculptra and Renuva. So I really wanted to give Renuva a try to see if it could have an added benefit. Also, Renuva doesn't seem to cause any type of fibrosis as opposed to Sculptra. With Sculptra, you can have some fibrosis or scar tissue, and we spoke about this on a previous video, but fibrosis isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Because fibrosis can help tighten the skin. Here's an example of someone's abs I treated with Sculptra, and you can see her skin is tighter after treatment.
If you're worried about Sculptra causing scar tissue and interfering with a facelift, you may opt for Renuva instead, even though you can have a facelift after having Sculptra. And we addressed this in a previous video. I know plenty of people who've gone on to have facelifts after having Sculptra. The main setback with Renuva is that it's a very expensive treatment, so not everyone is going to be able to afford this. But until another injectable is invented that's been proven to stimulate fat, this is our only option unless you want to get a fat transfer. I personally don't want to have surgery. Even though Bryan had a reaction to Renuva, his results are still from both treatments, Sculptra and Renuva.
And you can see both of these regenerative treatments help to create an increase in his facial volume, and I think he looks more attractive and healthier.
So I'm about to show you video footage of me under horrific, or what's known as bad overhead lighting. And the reason why I use this bad lighting
is because it highlights all of the concavities and topographical irregularities of the face. So I purposely wanted to film myself under this light so that I can see the hollow areas that need attention. These are my results so far. This is only after 2 months from 2 treatments of Renuva. I haven't even waited the full 3 to 4 months for the results, and I'm still going to do more treatments, but you can see that there's an improvement to the volume in my temples and preauricular area, or the lateral back area of my cheeks.
I think Bryan looks great. What do you guys think? Would you try your own Project Babyface? Have you, or would you ever get Sculptra or Renuva? Be sure to subscribe to this channel so that you can see my full results from Renuva, and don't forget to check these videos out next so that you can learn how you can be more naturally healthy looking and beautiful.